All right, everybody, and welcome to Intro to Python, a crash course in programming. This is, of course, brought to you by the Warsaw School of AI, a member of the global community called School of AI. You can get more information at theschool.ai. Also, today we are at Startberry, a great venue, a wonderful venue. It's in Warsaw Grochowska Street, so if you're in town, check that out. All right, so what is the deal here today? Who am I? Well, my name is Martin Krzyzewski. I'm a developer, analyst, content editor, dev skiller. I'm a co-founder at improv.pl. I'm dean of the Warsaw School of AI. I'm the host of the LDuck podcast, so that's about me. That's all you need to know. So what is Python? This is taken right from Wikipedia. It's an interpreted high-level programming language for general-purpose programming created by Guido van Rossum and first released in 1991. Python has a design philosophy that emphasizes code readability, notably using significant white space. It provides constructs that enable clear programming on both small and large scales. So it is definitely something that you want to learn more about for sure. It's ranked was one of the top languages in the world, and this is what the documentation looks like. There it is. So we're going to talk about that in a minute. But first, let's get through this intro. So who uses Python? Well, a lot of different companies use Python. We've got Dropbox, we've got Instagram, we've got IBM, we've got Netflix, we've got Spotify, we've got Facebook, we've got Google, we've got Reddit, and plenty more. It is very common and popular and well respected. So why should I learn Python if I'm not a software engineer? You can automate boring tasks. You can help manage a complex personal project. You can develop a tool for your family or friends. You can learn about other subjects while learning programming. So it's something that is incredibly flexible, versatile, and powerful. So isn't Excel, Google Docs good enough? Well, Python is for much more than just number crunching. It's capable of doing all the following: web development, data analysis, task automation, data collection, data processing, and more. The Zen of Python, let's do this. Let's get through the Zen of Python. Beautiful is better than ugly. Explicit is better than implicit. Simple is better than complex. Complex is better than complicated. Flat is better than nested. Sparse is better than dense. Readability counts. Special cases aren't special enough to break the rules. Although practicality beats purity, errors should never pass silently, unless explicitly silenced. In the face of ambiguity, refuse the temptation to guess. There should be one, and preferably only one, obvious way to do it. Although that may not be obvious at first unless you're Dutch. Now is better than never, although never is often better than right now. If the implementation is hard to explain, it's a bad idea. If the implementation is easy to explain, it may be a good idea. Namespaces are one honking great idea. Let's do more of those. So that is the Zen of Python, and that gives you pretty much a pretty good idea of both the humorous origins of Python, which is obviously named after Monty Python, the very famous comedy group. But it also gives you some really useful tips that you can sort of refer back to if you're working in Python and you run into some issues. You can just read through this and maybe get some inspiration. All right, so let's get into the live coding, and we're going to put that into practice in a moment. All right, so what is web scraping? Web scraping, web harvesting, or web data extraction is data scraping used for extracting data from websites. Web scraping software may access the World Wide Web directly using the Hypertext Transfer Protocol or through a web browser. While web scraping can be done manually by a software user, the term typically refers to automated processes implemented using a bot or web crawler. It's a form of copying in which specific data is gathered and copied from the web, typically into a central local database or spreadsheet for later retrieval or analysis. Okay, so web scraping, it's all about getting data from the internet in a way that's more or less automated. And you can, of course, do that with Python. We're going to show you how today. So what is a REST API? Representational State Transfer, REST, is an architectural style that defines a set of constraints to be used for creating web services. Web services that conform to the REST architectural style, or RESTful web services, provide interoperability Web services that conform to the REST architectural style or RESTful web services provide interoperability between computer systems on the internet. REST-compliant web services allow the requesting systems to access and manipulate textual representations of web resources by using a uniform and predefined set of stateless operations. What does that mean? That means that if you want information from, let's say, Facebook has an API, which means that they've described in very specific detail what you need to do in order to get data from their website in an automated way. That means if you have a script, that script sends certain data, like, for example, some header information to Facebook, and then the Facebook API responds with a JSON response, and then you can do whatever you want with that data. So it's an incredibly easy way for organizations, companies, nonprofits, everybody to allow outsiders to gain access to data on the server, but in a very controlled manner. And you can create a REST API yourself using Python in a matter of maybe 20 minutes, 30 minutes. But if APIs exist, why would I waste my time to write my own scraper? So if there is data that you'd like to get access to and available via the website, but not via the API, one of the only alternatives is to use a web scraper you've created, or use a service that will scrape the data for you. So actual web scraping businesses, there's money to be made from web scraping. That's the truth. You got to, obviously, there's things you have to consider. But here are 3 examples of actual real businesses that exist. You can collect all the company job post pages in the world and sell access to the data. So a company that does this very similar thing is called vacancysoft.com. And then what they do is they collect recruitment data, I believe, for companies in the UK. You can also collect the mugshots of people from all of the police databases in the USA and offer to remove them if the person in the photo pays to have them removed. That's mugshots.com, and I believe they were actually shut down for that, because it turned out that was not fair to people. It was like sort of blackmail or something like that. So they had trouble with that. But again, that raises also some issues that we're going to talk about in a second. Another idea is collect all the world's data and let people search for Google. Google is a giant web scraping robot. It's a bot, and it scrapes data and collects it, analyzes it, and then gives you the results. All right, so ethics of web scraping. What are the ethics of this whole entire process? Well, it turns out that you should follow these rules. Okay, there's some basic rules you need to follow, because remember, every call to a server uses electricity, uses server time, uses a computer's resources, and someone's paying for that. So it's great if you follow these ethical rules, at least the most important ones. So first of all, collect only the information that you need. Okay, if you, for example, need just the amount of likes that a certain Facebook page has, there's no reason for you to collect the entire Facebook fan page. Just, go to the Facebook API, figure out what you need to do to get that information, and then pull that data out. Even if that data isn't available by the API, maybe there's some other way to do it. Don't ignore robots.txt. Robots.txt is a file that every website contains, and it's essentially a file that tells you what you can and cannot do with a web scraper. So it's going to tell you sort of what kinds of things you cannot run, what scripts you can't do, and we're going to show you a real quick example here. Here's some example, a few example robots.txt files. This is from BuzzFeed.com, and you see it's user agent, MSN bot, crawl delay, disallow, and these are all the different sort of categories or subpages that the bots will not be allowed to use. Okay, so that's from Moz.com. All right, try to run your own scrapers at times that are lower usage times for a website. This is not really applicable to like global sites, but if you know that, for example, your friend is asking you to scrape some data from his site for whatever reason, and you know that they have a busy, their busy time is like between noon and 2 o'clock, then just scrape it at 3 in the morning, okay? And only write a web scraper if you need the information and the API is too limited. So if you want to get information from a website, always check if they have an API, okay? Just make sure they have an API, because if they don't have an API, then okay, I understand web scraping makes sense. But if they have an API, a lot of times you can get most of what you need, except with some strange edge cases. So check that out. Always Google or try to search around for an API for that site. Okay, the other thing is the dangers of web scraping. So here's just 2 real quick stories that people ran into, the problems they ran into. So there was a man that was sued by Facebook, or was going to be sued by Facebook for trying to build a service around collecting Facebook data. This is a couple of years ago. This was before the whole Cambridge Analytica scandal. And then a teen in Nova Scotia was arrested for downloading accidentally publicly posted government data. So what happened was in Nova Scotia, the government there, the local government, posted a bunch of data on the internet, and then they, I guess, they didn't want to do that, and it should have not been public. And this teenager found the data, and he's like, oh, this is public data, I'll just release it. And he got arrested for it, so be careful. All right, so what is a library? A library is also a collection of implementations of behavior written in terms of a language that has a well-defined interface by which the behavior is invoked. For instance, people who want to write a higher-level program can use a library to make system calls instead of implementing those system calls over and over again. So in Python, a library can be used to do any number of things. For example, like today we're going to learn about requests, which is a library for sending HTTP requests to a web server and getting some data back. And Beautiful Soup is for parsing data, HTML data, for example. And libraries are very often open source. They're free to use, free to download. There was some controversy recently that you have to be careful of, and we'll talk about those in a second. So how do I use a library in my project? It's pretty simple. Let's just show an example here of what we're going to do. So we're going to go to GitHub. And when we go to GitHub, we have the search bar. And let's say we want to do something, for example, parse HTML, right? We want to parse HTML. Let's do it. So what do we see? Okay, we see everything in here. It's a lot of stuff going on. What you want to focus on, especially if you're learning Python, is go over here to the Languages tab, column, and click on Python. You got 609 libraries that, or repos that, code repos that are under parse HTML. As you can see, one of the top ones here is this library. And this is a standards compliant library for parsing and serializing HTML documents and fragments in Python, HTML5 lib, and this can be used for parsing HTML. Okay, so once you find that library, read the docs. Okay, and as you can see, the docs for this library, for example, are right here. This is the whole README file, and a lot of times there's also, if you look around carefully, there should be also a link to maybe some external documentation, but this README file is pretty detailed, and in this README file you can go in and you can see exactly how to use this to parse your HTML. All right, install the library, of course. You want to do that, and you can usually use pip, just pip install and then the name of the library. Import the library, so you want to do that by just typing, in your Python project at the very top, you want to import all of your dependencies, and you can just write import in the name of the library once it's installed. Well, that's it, you're done. You can use the library, so that's pretty much it. All right, so what are the pros and cons of using a library versus writing a solution from scratch? So although there are many great libraries out there, make sure to do the following due diligence for using a library in a commercial or serious project. Okay, read the license. Okay, make sure that you can actually use it. If we go back to GitHub, what you can do is you can take a look at this right here. Right here, this is the license, and it tells you this is the MIT license, a short and simple permissive license with conditions only requiring preservation of copyright and license notices. So MIT license is one of the sort of most permissible licenses out there, and I definitely suggest that you use it for your project to allow everybody to sort of freely contribute and make your project better. There are some restricted licenses, so be careful, because there are licenses on GitHub where you download it, you use it, you put it in your project, and it turns out actually you need their permission to use it or to change it. So see also when the last commit was made. So if we go once more back to GitHub and we go to this library, we can see the history. We see 1,547 commits. Let's click on that, go in there. And what do we see? That the last commit was made 27 days ago. Now that's not bad, but if you go into a project that you're thinking of using and the last commit was made over 6 months ago, then it might be better to find a library that's a little bit more fresh, up to date. And also make sure that there are valid, up-to-date, well-written docs. So if you are reading the documentation and it mentions, for example, using Python 2.7 and it doesn't talk about Python 3 at all, then maybe that means that the documentation is outdated, and or maybe you just need to find a different library. Okay, so what is Python requests? Python requests is great. We're going to take a look at that right now. Let's do that right now. Let's go just into GitHub. Let's get used to using it. So we're going to type requests, and that something should come up. No. Sorry. Okay. Okay, we're going to go to Python requests, yes. So this is request HTTP for humans. This is so cool. This library, and look at this, in this little bit of code here, you can request a page, you can get a 200 status code, you can get the headers, you can get the encoding, the text, the JSON. It's a very, very easy way to interact with regular web servers, not using an API call, but just interacting with the server itself, much as you would with a browser. Great documentation too. Go through this documentation, really read it. You got the introduction, tells you how to install requests, quick start, and all the key features really: making a request, passing parameters, response content. Make sure you go through at least all of the things here in the quick start, and then a lot of really nice, juicy, wonderful content in the advanced usage. So definitely check that out. A very powerful library, a lot of fun to use. So we're gonna be talking about that in a second. All right, so let's do the live coding. And what is Beautiful Soup? So Beautiful Soup is a Python library for pulling data out of XML and HTML files. It works with your favorite parser to provide idiomatic ways of navigating, searching, and modifying the parse tree. It commonly saves programmers hours or days of work. So if you think about an HTML document, let's just go into this this document here. I'm going to right-click on that, and I'm going to inspect it. And so I've got this data in here, but let's say that I want to get the anchor text, the prepared request. I want to get this text, right? Well, it would be really annoying to write a regular expression to try to grab that, or try to grab it just by looking for, certain patterns. It's a lot easier when you use a parser like Beautiful Soup. You can just say, just give me all the links, and from all the links, give me the link text, and it makes your life a lot easier. So that's a really, really great thing to use. Don't try to ever parse by hand or write your own parser. All right, let's do the next coding. All right, so that was great. So we learned all about what is Python, what is Python capable of? What can we do with libraries? What are some of the interesting things about APIs? What are the dangers of using web scraping, right? What do you have to watch out for? Well, we did a lot. We did coding. We had a lot of fun. What I want you guys to do is the next steps. These are crucial. We're going to do these every time we create content for you. We're gonna challenge you to do the next thing. So take what you've learned tonight and create your own customized web scraping application to collect data that interests you. These are just some things you can try to do. Use the Flask web framework to create a simple admin panel to easily control your scraping application. The application should have the following features: set the script schedule every 12 hours, 24 hours every week, every once per month, and set the base URL that the app will use when scraping. Post your code to GitHub so we can discuss it at the next Warsaw School of AI meeting. And the 2 best projects in terms of code quality and execution will be featured on our Facebook page and mentioned at the next meeting. So good luck, Warsaw Wizards. I hope you love this intro to Python. And if you have any feedback for us, go to our Facebook page and our soon-to-be-launched website, which will be schoolofai.pl. So thank you very much.